Welcome back to Conversations at the Summit. I'm Tanya Arnold, and this is the No Nonsense podcast brought to you by Climb UK.
Maybe I'm not meant to be a scientist. It's so hard. There's so many barriers and hurdles that maybe I'm not meant to do this. I wanted to come to the UK. And I think the UK gave me back my confidence. I have the product, but I have to optimize it. I know it works, but I have to optimize the formulation and I have to test it based on the formulation. I know it's going to be biodegradable because you could basically eat the glue. But there is a lot of testing, certification. So before market, it's a very long journey.
On this episode, we're going to be chatting to Victoria Garcia, who's a chemist by trade and has turned that into being a founder and a business facilitator. We will explain, and alongside her, as ever, Gordon Bateman, the founder of Climb UK. So, Victoria, I want to take you back to Spain because you are Spanish. What was a young Victoria Garcia like?
I think I was very curious, always. And I think I was always very eager to learn. And kind of, so I grew up in a small village, and I think I always wanted to explore and see new things. So when I was 19 or 18 or something like that, I moved to Ireland. So I'm a chemist, but my bachelor's degree, I studied in Galway, in Ireland, University of Galway. So I left when I was very young.
You're sitting in a village in Spain. How do you end up in Galway? That's not an obvious jump.
Oh, true. Oh, this is interesting, right? So I wanted to go to Ireland to learn English during summertime, and through the government, I applied for some grants, and I was a very good student. So then I got that grant, and it was like something like around €2,000 back then to go and study English for like a month or something like that. So that's how I ended up in Galway that summer. And then once I was there, I was like, I don't think I want to go back to Spain. I loved it. I loved everything. I loved the English language and I loved the Irish culture. And I was like, so if I want to be in university, I could do the same. And it's not that I was studying, let's say, history or languages. Chemistry is quite international, I thought. So then this is how the journey started. And I must say, imagine this was like August, end of August. And the academic year starts in September, right? So it's like, I can just go and start my university degree here. So I emailed the university and they were like, oh no, if you want to start in September, you need to apply in May. So you're welcome to apply next year. I'm like, no way, I'm not going to miss an entire academic year because, is there no way for me? No, I'm sorry. This is the way things are done. So then I went to the international student office, and then I went to the chemistry department, and I was like, and everybody was like, it was always the same answer. Get real, basically. That was the answer. At a point I was like, you know what? That's it. So I called the dean of the faculty. It's like, look, I really want to study chemistry. I would like to do it starting. I know that the academic year starts next week, but I'm ready to go and do it. And then the answer of the dean was like, oh yeah, I don't see why not.
It strikes me already as an 18-year-old in a foreign country, you ain't taking no for an answer. Already I can see how you've gone on to be a founder.
Yeah. So then, some of the secretaries or administrative that said no had to process my application out of time deadline or whatever. And a week later I was in Ireland studying my chemistry degree.
So you get your degree, then what?
Then I said in my head, I am going to be doing chemistry for the rest of my life. So what I need to do now is to go and traveling before I go and get a job and then be forever in chemistry. So I went traveling. I was volunteering in the south of Mexico. I went to Switzerland, just like for a year. And mind you, this was 2008. So when I started applying for jobs, guess what? Guess what happened? So I had to basically keep on studying and getting. So then this is how I was like, okay, so what am I going to do now? I need, let's say, a PhD, a master's degree to do something while, the economic crisis disappears. And so it's like, okay, so when, and then this is how I ended up in the Netherlands. So I moved to the Netherlands to study my master's degree in molecular design and synthesis.
So you've learnt English in Ireland.
Yeah.
Now you're in the Netherlands.
Yes.
Do you speak Dutch as well?
No, I was able to understand it, but everybody spoke English there. And the master's degree was also in I was going to say in Dutch, it was also in English. So I didn't have to.
Well, that's something. I was beginning to get the point of, you're off the scale with all the skills. So when did you finally get a job?
Well, during the master's. So as part of the master's, I had to do an internship in a pharmaceutical company. And that was effectively my first job in chemistry, in industry. And it was great. And actually, now that I look back, I realized that I like my supervisor there, and he was a scientist. So we were in the company was like 400 employees or something. But he was the first employee of the company. And he used to tell me stories of how the pharmaceutical company was set up. It was the owner of that company wanted to develop generics. So then basically make drugs whose patent had already expired. So then he would just copy the formula, and then he would be able to sell it at a cheaper price to hospitals or pharmacies and stuff. And so he had this idea and hired this other guy who was my supervisor. And I used to get like the stories of how a startup was formed. Back then, I was 20-something. There is no way I would have ever imagined myself ever setting up anything close to.
But it's piecing together. You're
adventurous.
You don't take no for an answer. There's this seed. But you've also worked your way through. You funded this. This isn't, your family haven't paid for this. You're funding yourself through all of this.
Yeah, like even I funded everything. So my studies, like with government grants, both Spanish government, Irish government, and always having a part-time job to finance my studies. And even that course, like I went to study English, even that was funded by a grant. So yeah, funded my entire life basically.
When you were in that first job in science, you've got a founder essentially who's obviously a scientist next to you. And I love the fact, by the way, that you've captured the essence of no jargon and started to get rid of that before it started. It's great. But did you notice differences in the way that individual behaved and their attitudes compared to other supervisors? As a founder, did you start seeing similarities in yourself at that point, or?
One of the things that I noticed, and I think it is that those people, founders, we tend to be very resourceful. So when you say you don't take no for an answer, so if I want a piece of equipment that is, let's say, too expensive or I can buy it comes like, okay, so how can I buy this piece of equipment if I don't have the money? Where can I have the venue for my podcast if everybody's saying no? So I think those characteristics, like the one that I'm mentioning now, is the resourcefulness that I think entrepreneurs have.
So how long were you with them?
For a year.
And then?
And then I moved to academia. I got a job. So then that was it was a job. It was a PhD, but it was a job. And I never finished the PhD. Just I got kicked out.
Oh, come on. You can't just leave it there.
Oh, my God. So I started a job and I think I'm a very good scientist, but the supervisor was not there the day of the interview. So that there was not the supervisor, the professor of the department. He wasn't there. And then the supervisors, so the people that were going to be supervising me, they interviewed me, they liked me, and they offered me the job. And then I met the professor of the department, and he didn't like me at all. It was just like this clash, if you have an employee or a colleague and you don't like them. So he put up with me for a year and a half. And then he had the opportunity to basically terminate my contract there. So then rather than letting me finish, it was going to be 4 years. It was just like 1.5, and it's like, goodbye.
It must have been a tough time, though.
It was horrible. It was really, really tough. I was not understanding what was going on, and God, it was just like the politics behind everything, basically, but especially academia. You're not a good fit, and you're not a good scientist. You have to go. And imagine, like, I'm 20-something and hearing that, oh, you're not a good scientist. Like, this is what I am going to do for the rest of my life. What are you talking about? But that is what they had to say to basically say goodbye. And then they try to push me out in different ways. But, it's like, no, this is my job. I'm having fun and I'm doing it. I was doing a great job. And actually, there were like a lot of very dark things going on in that department.
So how do you build yourself back from that?
I didn't enjoy the Netherlands. And I've always liked the Anglo-Saxon culture. That I really like it. And I wanted to come to the UK. So then that was the moment that I was like, okay, nobody is going to hire me in the Netherlands. Then I have a professor that is going after a 20-year-old so that she can't work. So it's like, okay, I'm leaving the country. I left his department and I had to leave. So it's like, yeah, and I have to because I want to be in the UK. And I think the UK gave me back my confidence.
Which is important. I mean, you're a young female scientist in a strange country, and I'm guessing at that point, wondering a little bit about what you're going to do.
Oh yeah, definitely, because you really question. It was a moment that you question your capabilities, and then you also question, maybe I'm not meant to be a scientist. It's so hard. There's so many barriers and hurdles that maybe I'm not meant to do this. I got this thing that I was absolutely broke. It was this moment in my life that, imagine, I don't have a job. I am absolutely broke. I had 4 or 5 years of experience, which is not 10, to be confident that you're going to get a job. But then there is a massive shortage of science teachers in the UK. And somebody said, well, if you apply for a job as a teacher and like that, the agency that hired me here in the UK. So then I was contacted by an agency, and then that agency said, we can pay you £500 in advance if you come and work as a teacher for us, and we'll pay for your ticket. So that was like, okay, the UK is calling. Let's go and let's do this. And my plan, okay, I'm going to work as a teacher for a year. And then after that, once I'm, once I know the system, I'll be able to go and apply for jobs, interview, and then get a job back into the lab. Let's see how that goes. And then it was that during that year while I was teaching that I built my confidence back.
But you've always had a single kind of plan, vision that science is a thing, and you've stuck to it. Even when you were in teaching, it was a route back to what you love.
Yeah.
So I think you probably would still fight it if you thought you couldn't get back to your...
Yeah, that's the problem, right? That I was thinking that it is going to be this door, or that it is this way, or no other way. So then that's why you really fight and just go for it, thinking that there's no other alternative. Now, looking back, it'll be like, if you don't like me, there must be some scientist there, or supervisor or professor that would enjoy having me there.
So taking that, going backwards, when you think you've got one single door,
oh yeah,
and there really isn't one single door. Now, if you come across challenges, do you still think there's one single door, or has that taught you to look broader for solutions, do you think?
Yeah, that's it. Not only do I think that there's more doors, but there must be better doors, easier doors. There's that's the attitude that I have now. And actually I go like, if something is too hard, well, you know what, Victoria, it's not for you, because things need to come to you. So then, move on. Yeah. I changed my vision.
Should we jump forward to finding yourself in Yorkshire? Because you were in London.
Yes.
Down south. And then you found yourself up in Leeds.
Yeah, so that was great. So I was working for a startup. They were developing bioplastics, right? So it was a startup in London. These two guys, they were in there, like, again, a 23-year-old and a 24-year-old. They set up a company, imagine. Then I'm 30 years old now with all the experience working as a scientist, and I'm working like for these two guys that just had a vision. That's like absolutely insane. Like, I was like, oh my God, how can you? And it's not that they have a company, say a bakery. No, they have a lab. They have the resources to pay for research, scientific research. So it's like, that is already like, okay, there is something wrong here. Like, they don't even have they're not chemists, they're not scientists. So how can you just need to have a vision, and somehow they manage to gather the resources. So that was really inspiring, I'd say. And the important bit is that what I could say is that, yeah, they're bringing the resources, but what is going to sell is the technology that I am developing. And interestingly, I've done this already a couple of times. So the previous startup, I was the one developing the technology. And even in Utrecht, I developed very, very cool things. And they were my ideas, as bad scientist that they said I was. Those things were great, and the conclusions I drew and everything. So then this company, the bioplastics company, they got £1 million investment as a startup. So then we grew, the company expanded, and then we moved to Leeds, just, to relocate, to make the most out of that investment. And once we moved to Leeds, I used to love my job. God knows, I love the freedom that I had there. I love doing my science, and I love my team. But when we moved to Leeds, the whole team stayed behind. And then suddenly we had to hire 10 people. So then I am in Leeds, but 10 people, this is not my work. This is not my job. I don't want to be here. I don't like these people. Like, this is not the same. So I quit.
And what was it about that? So, because obviously back then, these two guys who'd set up the company had hired the right people, but what went so wrong that they hired the wrong people here?
Oh, Gordon, that's such a good question, because that happens a lot. You must have seen this. You're asking this because he knows what he's asking.
And that's your case.
That wasn't even my case, but it's true. And now that you say it, it's like it happened with a company, but I've seen it every time a company is like, you've done that, and then you get to that moment of big investment. Now we can hire a team. Now is when you start making big mistakes. You have little money, you're going to make mistakes, but they're going to be small. Once you have £1 million, your mistakes are going to be expensive, and you need suddenly a team of 10 people, rather than when you don't have money, you hire somebody who's your friend, who's very motivated, because, for that salary, you're only going to find people that are really motivated. And then you grow through connections and friends and create that bond. But then suddenly when you have money, you need 10 people, and then you just find people that need a job and that you don't have the time to.
So you're in Leeds with no job, but you've seen two guys in their early 20s use your science
to get that investment.
So your brain is going 10 to the dozen, I'm guessing.
Exactly. Connect the dots. And I went like, you know what? If they could do it, well, so can I, right? Because they were not even scientists. Little did I know, because bringing money and resources and being a business person, it's an art in itself. But if they did it, so can I. Yeah.
But you have. But what was the idea? Oh my
goodness, Tanya, but I've sweated blood. Yes.
But just tell us what the product was. What was the idea that you thought, this is the thing I can do? This is going to be my business.
So it happened while I was working. So then when we were developing bioplastics, basically, you get confronted to like all of the sustainability issues that are at the moment, and the technology, I was going to say, that is going to be developed, that needs to be developed, is basically to replace everything that we see around us come from fossil fuels, and it has to be replaced. So binders and glues is something that it is a hot topic in sustainability. And actually, these guys, the first thing that the first idea that they had was around binders as well. Then in the end, they turned into bioplastic, but binders, it was something that we had discussed in the company, like, with my colleagues and stuff. Do you remember that I was working as a teacher, right, when I moved to the UK? So I started interviewing, and before getting a job, one of the interviews, it was for a company that wanted to develop adhesives. So for that interview, I prepared myself. Imagine I wanted to leave being a teacher to become again to work as a scientist. So I prepared my interview. I did a market research. I did a fantastic, basically research proposal for binders. So I had that proposal there. It was very scientific, But it was that I went to the interview, I got the job, but at the same time I had another offer in Bristol. So I took the job in Bristol, and and that was it. And so when I quit my job in Leeds, the first thing that I did, thinking of binders is a hot topic at the moment. I remember when I did my market research and my scientific research that I came up with very good ideas. So I gave a call to those people that had interviewed me, and I was like, guys. Do you remember that you interviewed me like 3 years ago? How are you? And he's like, oh yeah, we're not doing that anymore. Why not? Like, yeah, no, we ran out of funding, and then we've pivoted into artificial intelligence or something like that. Oh my God, I can't believe you're really not developing the glues anymore. Oh no, that project actually stopped 6 months after your interview. So if I had gotten that job, I would have been fired, or I would have lost that job because they ran out of funding. And so it's like, so then now I am in Leeds, I'm jobless, I have a great idea. If they could do this, then why wouldn't I? And then I set up the company and started doing what I'm doing now.
It sounds wonderfully easy and very blasé. But apart from anything, you actually have to, you are a scientist. You've got the idea, but you actually have to create the product.
Yeah. Yeah. So then the only little thing I needed is a lab. Like, I have the ideas, I just need a lab. And you give me a lab, and I told you, if you give me a lab, I can do anything. A drug, a dye, like a plastic, just like, as long as it's chemistry, I can do it. I just needed a lab. So eventually I managed, right? There was back in the days with the regional European funding, the Biorenewable Development Center in York. So a research organization, they had some funding, and they go like, well, we can give you a lab for a month or 2. Okay, I'll take it. So then that's how Biodegradable started. I went there, carried out my experiments, and they were great. Like I already knew it was going to work, but then I basically had a minimum viable product, and from that moment on.
But you say that like, oh, there just happened to be this thing. There is a lot of, I know, because we've spoken about this before, there's a lot of research to even find that grant, and that, it's a bit like you said, oh, I kind of had this idea to set up a business. It's not quite like that, is it? There's quite a few tiny steps that are very easy in retrospect to forget along the way. It is challenging, isn't it? It's a tough market in chemistry.
It is really hard.
And you're a chemist. You're not by trade, you're a chemist. You're a scientist.
Oh my goodness, guys. I just realized that, for the entire year when I set up the company, and it took me a year to set up a LinkedIn account. So imagine like how not a business person I was. I didn't even have, like, if you go to my LinkedIn account, I have like 1,000 contacts, 800 contacts. Normally founders have like more than 5,000. Yeah, but my LinkedIn has been active for like a year and a half, that's it. And that was like after, like basically when I realized that I had to be out there. Basically, if you want to bring the resources, you can't be a scientist. The technology is great, but I don't know who I was telling the other day. I was saying like, if you come here and say, oh, I have this vaccination against cancer, like I got a cure card. Nobody is going to believe you, even if I have the technology and I give it to you, with this medicine, I cure cancer. Great. No, you need a company, you need the profile, you need to have that credibility. And then you can say, I might develop this if you give me the money. Oh, then I'm going to give it to you.
So you have got, I'm just thinking actually, my yogurt pot. So, you take the cardboard off the front, you've got the plastic, but there is the lump of glue that is stuck there. And I always do wonder when I put my plastic pot into the... But what you have developed is something that it can go in there because it's biodegradable, and you can actually recycle things that I think, and most of us think you can recycle, but you can't.
Yeah, no.
Because the glue is not biodegradable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you have this, you've got the science, you've got the product, you've set up your company. How do you get that funded?
The truth is that 6 months in, I had gotten a couple of grants, and then I got a big grant. So then the first grant was like £150,000, which now that I look back is not that much. But if you've never had anything, and you just have your idea, 150,000. It is a lot. With that, I could already pay myself. Yay! So I started paying myself and then paying for the lab, the lab here and there. So then this is how I funded, basically through grants.
How do you then grow it?
I have the product, but I have to optimize it. I know it works, but I have to optimize the formulation, and I have to test it at many different stages. Based on the formulation, I know it's going to be biodegradable because you could basically eat the glue. But there is a lot of testing, certification. So before market, it's a very long journey. This goes all through grants, awards. Then basically, my co-founder, for example, I can't offer you money, but I can offer you a percentage of the company and then help me moving.
What amazes me about your product is why big companies are not, A, biting your hand off, but B, why they haven't thought of it themselves, because presumably for their sustainability, they would want to do this.
There's many reasons for that. But imagine that you're a big company and you're selling this glue. You're making millions of this glue. What motivation are you going to have to carry out the research and test it and do the certifications and optimize and pay your scientists? Because, I had a great idea, but not everybody's going to come up with an idea like that. All of those. Their business model is not to do research. The business model is to sell glue, and they already have a product. So if something they need to fight the competitors, attract other markets, expand in a different way. There is no motivation for a big company that sells glue to develop a bio.
I think there's a knowledge gap as well, isn't it? It's a bit like, Tanya, you said earlier with your yogurt pot with the glue. Most people don't realise it's not biodegradable. So I think, well, if I bought a table that's made of wood, then it's biodegradable, but it's not because it's full of glue.
Yeah.
I think maybe there's some work needs to be done in a regulatory perspective as well in the binder part of the whole.
There is regulation and there is legislation to nearly eradicate the glue, but the government cannot come because the glue is toxic, and we said that it's carcinogenic and it's an indoor pollutant. There is a health issue associated with all of this. Now the environmental issue as well, but the government can't ban it because then what do we have as an alternative? So this has created certain motivation for big companies to look for alternatives, obviously, but there is no real rush.
So where are you at?
I am so excited. I'm at exciting. We've done industrial trials now, and we know, big manufacturers could literally replace their glue from one day to another now. Like, now I have the evidence for that. I am at the position that we need to keep on protect the IP and expand the IP. That is another issue. Like, patents are really expensive. So that's another thing, part of the journey that we didn't mention. Before commercialization, you need to make sure you have patented. So once that all of that is in place, we're going to start, which is going to happen like in the coming weeks, sending samples to IKEA, just to give an example of a company, but basically IKEA's competitors. It's like, guys, are you sure you want it or not? They can, if they start researching, of course, in 5 years, 6 years, they'll be able to develop a glue, of course. But then IKEA will be taking the risk that Miller's North, there's another big company, bigger than IKEA actually, buys my technology, and then in literally 3 weeks, they'll have sustainable adhesive. So then basically the card that I'm going to play is more the competition between them.
Go back a little bit. So you're saying the only way to fund this because of all the other things is grants.
Yes.
That scares the life out of 90% of the population as well. So talk a little bit about your grant journey and where you found them.
This is called ignorance. So then maybe we go to the ignorance, like, in my mind is like, how do you do research? Through grant. Okay, so then I'm just going to apply for grants. And then I got a lot of grants, and And only now I'm finding out that they're actually really difficult to get.
And increasingly so, yeah.
But I didn't know. And I am always very successful. So then we have an 80% success rate every time I apply.
That's because you won't take no for an answer.
They give you feedback. So then it's like, with your feedback, then I know what.
So, and is that what it is? What makes that such a high percentage? Because I'm in a number of chat groups for women-led scientists, women-led in business, who constantly find it very difficult. So what do you think's making your difference? Why are you getting them, do you think?
Okay, so I think the very first thing is the technology and the impact that it can have. So if my glue replaces fossil fuel-based glues, the environmental and health impact is going to be massive. So that is the first thing. Then the market, you see glue everywhere. So the market is something around 20 billion pounds each year. So those two factors are very important: the impact and the market. And then the last factor is how you present your idea, which is the part I became very good at.
And is that from your scientific background, or is that, as Tanya suggested, because you might suggest, I can't remember, but reading the feedback and then reiterating what you're. How have you got to get that knowledge? Because you haven't been on a course of how to get a grant.
Actually, I've invented a course myself, and I teach it, and then they're, oh my God, this is amazing. For example, a trick that I found, and I'm just gonna give my secrets here, but fine. It's like when you apply for an Innovate UK grant, you put your salaries, and then what I've seen with other founders is that they go a salary of 50 or 60,000 per year because I'm the CEO, and then this is and in my mind, so when I apply, so that is my salary, 38,000 pounds a year, is because the person, the examiner, the person that is marking your they're not going to be happy for you to get 60K a year when they themselves are on 40. So one of the tricks is that put your own wage low, 38, and then later on, you'll be able to modify that. Then later on, you'll be able to get more grants and top it up in different ways if you really need more than 30K. I don't, because I work on these lectures like that. It's like
you're too busy in your lab. So we've got the glue is there. We're teetering on going stratospheric with that. I talked about you being another business as a facilitator as such. So talk us through the idea behind Quick Labs.
Yes. So then I said, I had a great idea, right? And I even had a grant, but I needed lab space to develop everything. And that's how my grant was being basically spent on paying for the rent. It was absolutely horrible. And talking to all of the founders I've met in my space, so let's say developing new deep tech, they all encountered the same problem. So it's like all of us have the problem of finding lab space. And actually, I've met people that had great ideas, wanted to set up a company, but only thinking of, there's no lab space, I'm not going to manage to find a lab. That stopped many great scientists that I know from developing that technology that all of us need, by the way. So then this is how I said, we need a lab. We need a lab that is open access, that is cheaper than what we have out there. And I did my investigation. Why has this model? Why doesn't this? Why this idea doesn't exist yet? People didn't really know why. It's like, okay, so I'm gonna set up a lab, and it's going to be open access lab, affordable. It's going to be equipped, and then scientists can just come here and use it as a hotel. You come for a day or two because that is what you can pay, and then you go. Then you can come back in a week and keep on going. And
so, not only are you creating your own thing, you're facilitating. I mean. Yeah. I wonder which excites you more going forward. I mean, in that the glue will succeed. You will make a lot of money, I'm assuming, the way you're talking about it.
Yes.
But to help others, given the journey you've been on, does that almost excite you more than what you're going to achieve with your own product?
I get so excited when people come with their ideas and, they need the lab and they say, I'm developing this and that. I get so excited about their own science. And then, so it's not that I'm helping them build a company and facilitating that, but also I get excited about like being close to those inventions. So it's a hard one.
You see this in a lot of businesses, don't you, in offices? So here where we're filming this podcast, is part of a co-working space.
Yeah.
Downstairs. We get the benefit of cross-learning. So I assume you'll see the same of that cross-learning in the scientific space as well if you're sharing.
Exactly.
We shouldn't do this, but sod it, I own the damn thing. So a lot of our audience are going to be scientists. So here's an opportunity to plug, right? Then there's a real talk about the intricacies, how it works. I've invented something. I'm at the stage you were when you'd got the idea of the binders. How does it work? How do they get in contact with you and how does it work?
They just need to call, let us know what is it that we need. Like you must imagine that science is very broad, right? So it's not that we have everything. My goal is to have everything so that we get, but now I have the basic equipment for it. Basically chemistry experiments or things that need chemistry, a chemistry lab. So then it's very easy, and this is why I call it quick labs. Basically, you give us a call, you let us know what you need. So then we send you the booking system, and then you book your spot, you pay, you use the lab, and off you go.
Wow. If that becomes a thing, will you miss the science that you're physically doing it, do you think?
I'm not doing much science these days anymore anyways, Gordon. No, I think I will always have time to be in the lab and have my own ideas and spend, like I do it as a hobby. So I'm not going to miss it because I am going to do it.
The problem is you'll come up with the next thing and you're going to be back on this journey. And you're going to be back on this journey, aren't you?
No, it's so different now. Even with quick labs, it's been so easy. With Biodegradable again, nobody knew me. You can't trust somebody you don't know, and somebody who doesn't have a LinkedIn account. You truly can't trust them, and that was me. So now it's very different. With quick labs, I can feel the support. It's been so easy, such an easy journey in comparison. I'm working my arse off, but it's like easy. It's easy in comparison.
As well, with the people who come into your labs, they will have the dream that you have had.
Yes.
Will you also help as an investor, as somebody to help them build the company and impart the information that you've had in the way that you've been helped along the way by people?
So then basically what we are doing now, we even have an accelerator program which helps them like to apply for grants, and then I teach these little tricks like don't put yourself a ridiculous salary because that is going to deduct points of your application, or all of other tricks that I learned to build a very, very good application. So then we shared, and that has to do with the co-working space, what we were saying about how information is shared. This co-working space for labs, then they all benefit from all of the tricks, the advice, and everything that we help with. IP support if
So if I've got a building in Manchester that I don't know what to do with because it's kind of going into financial crunch with offices again.
Yeah.
What do I need to have for you to come and set up quick labs in Manchester?
So then one of the things that is very important to me is the location. If you look at the labs that we have here in the UK at the moment, they tend to be in the middle of nowhere for some reason. And for somebody who's just finished their PhD, they can't afford a car. And how are you even going to get there? And it happened to me when I was in York, in the Biorenewable Development Center. So then one of the things that I ask is that the building, the location needs to be close to the station. It needs to be accessible.
So you should tell the guys who own Allied London and Leeds Dock that those old Sky offices that are just over the way might make beautiful labs with the cheap parking that's across this side of the water. Perhaps if they're listening.
I have a feeling you might be making a call later. Gordon. You've got that glint in your eye. Every time we do one of these, a little glint in his eye. Victor, I have the feeling that you're going to take over the world. But do you know, you've got quick labs, you've obviously got the glue. Do you know what's next, or are you just waiting to find out?
I need to keep on growing this. For now, I was just thinking, the truth is that I was just thinking it this morning, like, I've really accomplished all the goals that I had in my 30s. And actually, the life that I'm living now was not even part of my wildest dream back in the days, like back in Utrecht. There's no way I would have imagined this. And so something that I'm doing is really enjoying the journey now. Like I have to enjoy it because I know things can get tougher or they will change. So for now, I just want to grow both businesses and see what's next. With these two, I have a very clear goal, which is having one Quick Labs in each city in the UK and major city in the UK. And with Biodegradable, put my invention in people's homes. So I think that if I get that, then I will think of what the next thing is.
Maybe have a nice big holiday. I think you will have earned it. Victoria, it's been absolutely fascinating listening to your journey, but also it's one of resilience as well and taking the hard knocks along the way and not taking no for an answer, I think it's fair to say. Victoria Garcia, thank you so much for joining us. Join us again for more conversations at the summit.